that? Oh God, I'm gonna die. I gotta get this on camera. No. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Marino Show. I'm your host, David Marino, and I'm excited to have my guest today. I'm interviewing filmmaker Nyle Cavazos Garcia. He is the man behind the upcoming film Catnip, and I'm so excited to see this film when it's complete because I love cats and I love horror movies. So two of the best things together. Nyle, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Nyle, I know you've done a number of other films. We can get into, your bio later because I know you've done a number of other things. But this film, Catnip, I had seen it all over social media as you were doing the Kickstarter campaign leading into production. Tell me about the film and just what you're looking forward to accomplishing with this kind of horror cat film. I'm so excited about it.
Well, I'm also excited. It's been a long year, but it also went by super quick. We've only been putting this together for a year. A year is a long time. But when I wrote the script, it went right into development maybe 2 weeks later. So I thought that, having a new screenplay, I would shop it around, we would be like talking about it. Most of the scripts that I've written kind of gets dusty. I have a shelf of scripts. I think there's probably Catnip's my 22nd completed screenplay, I believe. So you finish a script and you hope that somebody will look at it. With this, I had somebody interested in it before I finished it because I had pitched the idea to a producer, and he right away was like, "Oh, I got to read that. Can you send it to me today?" But I had only written 18 pages, I think, when we were having that conversation. I was just telling him about scripts I had, ideas that I had, and the cat one just grabbed on, or he grabbed onto it really like almost instantly. So I had to write it quick, send it to this producer, and then within a couple of weeks, it was in development with a different producer. So the first one took it to someone and said it's not for him. But then while that was happening, another producer got a hold of it and was like, "I want to make this movie with you." So then it's just been a year of just go, 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 go. Even 5 minutes before I met you for this interview, I was literally on 2 different phones doing a bunch of stuff, like getting all these things ready because we shoot, in 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
For those, who don't know, tell us about the film, what it's about.
So Catnip is what we've been calling it Gremlins for Grown-ups because it's about killer cats that trap these people in their apartment building on Christmas Eve. And it's, a gory horror thriller with some comedic elements. It's cats versus people instead of, gremlins versus people or aliens versus people. It's one of those creature features from the 80s or 90s. I'm sure a lot of people have their favorites, but Gremlins, Arachnophobia, Critters, something like that, but with cats.
I loved all those films from the 80s. That's what I grew up with. Gremlins. I just watched it at Christmas because I think it's a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie. It's 100% a Christmas movie.
Right.
It takes place during Christmas. That's the only thing that qualifies a Christmas movie.
I know.
Same with Die Hard.
So, I had interviewed Tiffany Meyer and Brooke Bundy about they're going to be appearing in the film, which is so exciting. And you have a number of other actors that are appearing. Can you just talk about, I know you have a long list of cast members, but can you talk about some of, the people that are going to be in this film?
Yes. Our cast is insanely huge for how small this movie is. We are a very limited budget indie horror movie, and I was expecting maybe we could get like the interest of one or two name actors to kind of like round out our cast. I was looking at a lot of people who I think are fantastic actors, people that I worked with before initially, and then the more that we like shopped it around and we started casting, we got Brooke Bundy, Tiffany Helm, their mother and daughter from Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, respectively. And then we got Akihiro Kitamura from the Human Centipede movies. Since then, we brought on Jake Busey, Charlotte Kirk, who's been in a lot of international horror thrillers like Duchess and The Lair and The Reckoning. We got Jeffrey Arend from Devil and Super Troopers. We just cast Chevy Chase, who everybody knows from Christmas Vacation and Caddyshack and Fletch. We just cast Bruce Dern from The Burbs in Nebraska, and we just cast Joey Lauren Adams from Chasing Amy, and she was in a great horror movie called Animal not that long ago that I just watched. So our cast is crazy. It's like it's an ensemble, so we wanted there to be a good actor or a recognizable, familiar actor in all of these roles, just to make it to fill it out, and we managed to do it. Every speaking role has a pretty fantastic actor in it. We're very lucky.
And one of the unique parts of this film is the cats and how you're sort of giving back to the community with these cats. Can you talk about that element of kind of working? People are kind of we're adopting these cats, right, as part of the film. Explain
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. We have our animal trainers and special effects artists are the same organization. They're called Fox FX Lab from Riverside, California, and they have a cat sanctuary in Riverside, and have rescued and adopted. I think they have upwards of 20 cats. Not all of them are performing cats, but of the 20, all of the cats that they've rescued and have trained to perform for movies and TV are going to be in this movie. And then they cast additional cats based on the script, and those cats they also rescued and adopted and have trained to be in our movie. And what we're doing once we're complete is we're going to donate small proceeds from this movie back to those shelters so that they can help get more animals adopted, which we think is very, very critical and important, especially since we're using so many live animals. We just want people to know that even though our movie is about killer cats, that we love cats and we want people to go adopt cats. So hopefully it'll do that.
And I love that you're using real cats. Like, I know it's an indie budget and everything, but you're actually using real cats. You're not doing any sort of CGI or anything like that. These are like 100%. Like, that makes me think of like Pet Cemetery. I know it's a different premise, but
Hmm.
there is really something about, those 80s films, even the 70s films, that they used practical effects because they didn't always have a huge budget. For you going into this film, was that part of the reason you wanted to do that? I mean, were there some inspirations growing up for you that sort of contributed to how you looked at this film and how you wanted to make it?
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole the idea came from a conversation that I had with somebody a long time ago about those movies. We were talking about Cujo and I think Piranha, like all these creature features, like and critters and gremlins and all those too. But we're trying to think of a cat one, or not like a horror movie where there are cats in it, but a horror movie where cats were the monsters that people were trying to get away from, and there aren't really any. So that just got me thinking about why not, and maybe it's because cats are very hard to train, or maybe it's people didn't want to vilify cats because you know we love them. Well, most people love. Well, I think there's a camp that are cat lovers, and then a camp that are cat non-lovers. But I think most people love cats. But um, my idea was to do a Cujo type movie, but with cats. And if I was going to do that, I wanted to do it like Cujo or like those movies did. So live animals, practical special effects, animatronics, um, nothing CGI, no AI, nothing that looks like a video game or fake. It's very grounded in reality. It's gritty, and it's a reflection of those movies that kind of sparked the idea to do one like that, but with cats.
And you're going to be directing,
Hmm.
right? You're directing the film.
Yep.
Um, Tell me what's the thing that you're looking forward to the most about being on set? Obviously you have all these different actors, but for you, what is one of the big things that you're looking forward to once you start rolling?
That's a good question because the whole experience is fantastic. It's hard to like you can't. It's not like I have a favorite part. It's the whole thing. Just being on set and watching your imagination come to life is there's nothing like it. And filmmakers, I even think at the higher levels, you don't have the opportunity to do that all the time. There's a lot of um, a huge process to get you to a movie set, and then once you're there, it's just everything about it is amazing. Um, so for me, I'm the most excited to be back on a set where where I can play, and the fact that we're doing horror makes it so much better because it's my favorite genre, and that just means that we can play with more things, you know.
I always find horror movies to be, I mean, they're fun. You can be very creative. Not that you can't in other, genres, but sometimes I feel like horror gets a bad rap or people don't always take it. Those who are highbrow don't always look at it as, necessarily always as legitimate as other films. I, on the other hand, have grown up watching those films. I mean, they were a comfort to me growing up. And I just absolutely love everything about, especially 80s slasher flicks where I grew up and creature features, all of that. I think that, you know, you can really take chances and do fun things in those films that maybe you couldn't do it in another kind of genre. And also the special effects to me, the makeup and all of that stuff, I think is really, really cool. How is, that kind of panning out for you in terms of like the special effects and all that, and with the, the kills and those types of things?
It's going well. I wish that I was there because it's all happening in Los Angeles or in the Los Angeles area. The makeup team is in Riverside, and all of our locations are in San Pedro, California. And then our crew and everything's coming from LA proper. And I'm on the East Coast. So I'm seeing a lot of Zoom footage and FaceTime stuff, and I'm getting photos, and I'm trying to wardrobe from this 3,000 miles away, and I want to feel it, I want to see it, I want to be in the room when these choices are being presented to me. It's been I feel like I'm the last one to the party because they're all there already working on this, and they have been for a while, and I don't get there until Saturday. So I'm very excited to be a part of my own movie. I want to just be there and be able to do all that stuff. I know that the special effects has been working for, I mean, 7 months now. I think they've been working for about 7 months, maybe a little longer. Um, and they're doing an amazing job. I keep getting footage from their shop, and they have a lot of things built. The animatronics are super cool, and I can't wait to film them. And the idea is that my DP and I, we have a lot of. It's going to be a very visceral movie, a very um, uh, gory but grounded and scary. We're trying to like. I want to recreate that kind of movie for today's audience. You know what I mean? I don't. I wish I could make something like a Cujo or American Werewolf in London or something like that, using everything practical. And I think now there's finally like an audience for it with Terrifier and all this stuff that's been coming out lately. So now I think that we can finally do it. And the kills are huge and very fun. And I don't want to give anything away because those are all the big set pieces. But I promise that this movie, that we're all trying to make it the most fun that we possibly can.
How long do you anticipate the shoot taking? And then once you're out of that and production, editing and all that, when are you hoping to have it out into the world?
We shoot for 18 days, 3 weeks, so 6-day weeks. And then we go right into post-production. I'm sure I'll be editing footage together on the 7th day. Other people will rest, but I'll be editing. And then we go into post-production for probably, we'd like to have the movie finished for cast and crew for Halloween 2025, and then release across the world for Christmas. That's the goal. So if we can have it sooner, then we will, but I like to tweak until the very last possible second, so I'm sure I'll be doing something until 5 minutes before we show it. But yeah, that's the goal.
Is this your first horror movie, or have you made other horror films before?
This is my first horror feature. I've made a handful of horror shorts. This is my third feature, but my first two were more on the dramatic, psychological level. This is the first time that I get to do all the gore and scares at the feature level. Before that, I do have an anthology of short horror films that were released called Dark Passenger, but that's a collection of the short horror movies I'd made over the span of about 10 years. You can find that on Amazon Prime. It's called Dark Passenger Volume 1. So if you count that, this is my second feature, but that's a collection of shorts, so I don't count it. This is my first in this genre.
You also founded Small Town Pictures is what it's called, right? Your film company.
Yeah, I started that. I'm originally from Idaho, and there weren't a lot of film opportunities where I grew up, so you kind of had to create your own. And I went to university there under a full scholarship, but they didn't have a film program, so I created my own. And I revitalized their film club. We found some 16 millimeter film equipment that hadn't been used in decades, and we had it repaired. I started a film club, and then I directed a very gory short horror movie, a vampire movie called Wedding Night. And that was the first time that they'd rolled film cameras at that university in like 30 years. And then for that movie, I created small.
Where the hell my phone? Where the hell my phone?
I love that. I have to keep that as a blooper, man.
Sorry about that. My phone has been going off pretty much all day. So I created Small Town Pictures for that movie, and then I just kept it. I've had it ever since.
That's amazing, especially like hearing your story that you were it was up to you to sort of create your world at school. You went to Boise State University, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So in terms of, after you got out of college, and how did you, because I always hear this from filmmakers, you really, as with anything you do, but especially in the field that you're in, it takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You have to do a lot of things without a ton of resources sometimes. So how did you start what was the inspiration to keep moving forward through challenges? And even today working in indie film, how have you maintained your sort of, passion and love for the craft while balancing the business part of it, which can sometimes be, discouraging for people? How have you managed to do those things, like to feed your passion, but also deal with, the other side of it, which can sometimes be limiting, I guess is the right word.
It's been it's a struggle. I can understand how creative people kind of give up. Opportunity doesn't really present itself to creatives, at least not in a profitable way. It's, I'm always working. I won't speak for everybody because everyone has their own journey. But for me, as a creative person, I've always had a job to support my craft. I have a family. I have four sons, and finding the time to keep doing this is always a struggle. But I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 8, and I just haven't given up, and I won't. And that's kind of why this movie happened so quickly, because it happened at a time where I was very determined to make a feature. I just come off a short called Last Ride. That was my, I don't know, 15th short in a row or something, a high number like 15. And I decided that the next project I'm going to do is going to be a feature film, and it's going to be a horror movie. And I just did it. I'm doing it. And I think the key is just, don't get discouraged, and don't stop trying. Don't stop believing. You gotta keep going. You're gonna hear no. You're gonna hear no a lot more than you hear yes. I know a lot of people say that, and it's very true. But if you don't try and you don't ask, then you're just gonna be wishing that you did. I feel very lucky to have this opportunity, and I'm very ready for it.
You said that you wanted to be a filmmaker since you were 8 years old.
hmm
What was it that sparked your interest at that age?
There is this movie that I'm sure you heard of called The Nightmare on Elm Street that I watched probably 1,000 times when I was 8 years old, because my parents split up when I was young, and my mom bought a VCR, and it was the first time that we had that, so we were able to like go rent movies, and I just I was always addicted to storytelling. I guess I loved books when I was really really young. I learned to read really really young. I think I was 4 when I started reading like my first book, like cover to cover. So once I was introduced to movies, I was just automatically hooked from a very very young age. The first movie I saw was Star Wars at a drive-in cinema, um, and then that kind of like started my imagination going in that direction. But Nightmare on Elm Street was the reason why I decided to be a filmmaker. My brother rented it with his girlfriend at the time. I think it was his girlfriend, and then they broke up. I'm putting a lot of the story together because this is how I remember it. He had a girlfriend. They rented Nightmare on Elm Street. They broke up, and she left it at our house for like 3 months. So, and I wasn't allowed to watch it. But my mom worked because my parents were separated. So she went back to work after school from 3 until she got home. I was by myself. And this was the 80s. So even though I was 8, I got myself home and made my own food. You're like a little grown up when you're a kid in the 80s. And I would watch that movie every single day from the moment I got home until I knew that she was coming home. Every day until my brother's girlfriend came back to get it. And it was had to have been, I don't know, it was like 3 months, because I remember I had watched that thing at least 100 times. I had it memorized. It was like it became an obsession for me. I wanted to know how they did it. I'd never felt that way before. That movie made me feel everything at the same time, and it was like so exhilarating, and it sparked like a life inside of me that I didn't know I had, and I had to know. I was dissecting the movie as a kid. That's why I was watching it. I was just trying to understand it. And then that started everything. From that point on, I was just hooked on horror movies, hooked on slasher movies, hooked on filmmaking, and it's all because of whatever my brother's girlfriend's name was at the time. I don't know. I should call her and, and thank her. And what's funny is I'm gonna call my brother and tell him like this, ask who that was. He's gonna be like, no, that's not at all why we had that movie for 3 months. But anyway, that's the reason why.
Have you had a chance to meet anybody from the original film, or in your time in the filmmaking world? Have you met anyone associated with A Nightmare on Elm Street?
I have. I met Wes Craven. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I'm friends with Marianne Maddalena, who was a producer with Wes Craven. They had Craven Maddalena Films, I think, or Craven Maddalena Films was their production company. She produced the Scream franchise with him, and they've been together for a long, long time. And she's a friend of ours through my wife, and they arranged for us to go to a screening of The Hills Have Eyes sequel. I think, um, no, Jonathan Craven directed that. Wes Craven's son directed that. So we went to the screening. It was for cast and crew, and Wes Craven was there. And Marianne already knew the story about how I wanted to make movies and how much I admired that movie. So she introduced us, and I got to tell him that his movie changed my life in person, which was very huge for me. And I'm very lucky that I got to meet him because not very long after that he passed away. Um, but yeah, I got to meet my idol, and he was awesome. He was really nice and very intimidating, even though he's so quiet and kind. But yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome. It's like you get to meet one of your heroes. I mean, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Are there any other like kind of those types of horror movies that you said you got into it after that? Are there any other favorites that stand out to you?
I have most of them are from the same decade. The 80s and 90s were very inspirational for me. I after they took away my Nightmare on Elm Street, I made friends with the girl that managed the video store down the hill from where I lived. I would pass by every day on my way to school, and I would go in there and I would just help. Like I would just tidy things up. I'd reorganize the shelves, anything I could do to just be around movies. And she would give me posters and stuff for my room. And then I made a deal with her that I could get one free movie for payment every day if I stopped in and helped. So I would just go and I made my way through the horror movie section first. I organized it because I'm very like OCD like that. I had to alphabetize it. And then I started at A and I went all the way through the whole selection until I got to the last movie, and then I went and did it again. Um, so anything that's horror slasher was like my go-to as a kid and teenager. Anything that was Freddy or Jason or Michael Myers, um, all those franchises are really, really inspirational for me. But I think to answer your question, it was after that when I kind of learned when I got a camera for the first time and I started seeing how different directors had their own style and their own vision. I started to kind of figure out what mine would be, and I started leaning a lot towards Martin Scorsese and Roman Polanski. I love Alfred Hitchcock so much.